Chapter 10 Ursa Major. The sweet scent of honeysuckle filled the air as the intrepid traveler stepped out of the healing hut and into the world once more. A fine-looking home stood 2 stories strong against the elements among the thick trees of the greenwood. Vines climbed up the wood, and hummingbirds buzzed as frequently as bees. The world around them spoke of strength and resilience. The trees were all broad and sturdy, and the plants were vibrant and healthy. As Falon took it all in, Arthur rushed past her and disappeared into the woods. "Where is he going?" she asked without thinking. "He has been away from the woods for many days," the old woman told her. "I believe he is off to answer the call of nature." An embarrassed smirk appeared on Falon's face as she continued towards the cabin. The front door opened as they approached, and the hunter stopped dead at what she saw. A large grizzly bear stood at the entrance on her hind legs, wearing human clothes. "Ursa," the Baba spoke as if to an old friend, "it is a pleasure to see you again." "Hulda?" rumbled the great mother bear in friendly words Falon could understand. "How wonderful of you to visit! And you've brought a friend. Good heavens, child, what has happened to your hair?" "I believe she cut it off," Hulda remarked with a gentle smile. "She is a Sagi's after all." "A Sagi?" The great bear's brown eyes blinked like a town gossip. "Oh my, how is she?" All eyes turned to Falon, who gasped like a goldfish, searching for her voice. She's fine, ma'am." "I think I scared her, Hulda." The great bear woman walked slowly forward on 2 legs like she was built for it. "Don't be afraid, child. My name's Ursa, but you can call me Mama if it settles your mind." "Yes, ma'am." "Yep, you broke her," Baba Hilda chided. "This is the most polite I've ever seen her." Both of the elders laughed, a witch's cackle and a bear's low chuckle. "Well, she'll get used to it," Mama Bear said in a calming tone. "Cynthia didn't talk for a week when she came to us. And now look at her." "Oh, how is your little vandal?" Hulda asked. "Oh, she's fine. Never misses a meal, and looks almost bear-like herself." The mother bear spoke kindly, but her eyes said things could be better. Hulda raised a brow. "Come in if you want to hear the story, and I'll set the kettle on." Falon felt her body move on its own, dragging her into the home. The bottom level was well constructed, with a solid wooden floor, and contained more than one room. The walls had been decorated by bits of nature, as well as a few painted portraits. The house would have fit neatly into Selena's village, and Falon realized that this may have been at least one of the reasons it made her feel so uncomfortable. "Honey, Hilda?" their hostess asked as they all took seats around the fireplace. "Oh, yes," the old Baba said as Ursa prepared her tea. "Thank you." "Honey, "Falon," Hilda said when the young hunter failed to speak.
"Oh, honey, Falon?"
the great bear mother asked. Falon opened her mouth to respond, but was only able to utter a single useless sound. "Just say yes, dear," Hulda told her. "You have never had proper honey until it was cultivated by a bear." Though mute, Falon managed to nod and hold the mug of hot tea that was thrust upon her. She was unable to take her eyes off of the great grizzly bear who sat in her oversized chair with all of the poise and grace of a human housewife. "So, Ursa," the crone said in serious tones, "what has you worried?"
"Oh, it's Ursa,"
the great bear mother lamented. "Still holding a grudge?"
"It's crossed the line and become a bit more passionate."
"Love or hate?"
"Love."
"Oh, dear."
"Yes," Ursa nodded. "Now Papa Bear's roaring about tradition and carrying on about what's natural. It's all a terrible mess."
Sweet honey exploded across Falon's tongue, distracting her from the small talk. A silly feeling broke inside of her as she remembered stories of bears and their honey. Part of her had always assumed this to be as silly as mice loving cheese when they would eat anything, and cats loving milk when it did terrible things to their body. Now, as all of her senses were focused upon a spoonful of sweet gold, she questioned all of her general lore. "Nothing gets past you." Baba Hilda's voice pulled her back into the conversation.
"I raised 2 boys plus their pa,"
the mother bear said proudly.
"Not to mention our indentured daughter."
"Yes, well, this one's pa is trapped in the mist." It took a moment for Falon to realize Baba Hilda was speaking of her situation, but the mention of the mist turned Ursa's expression sour.
"Avalon has him?"
Ursa asked, and Hilda nodded.
"Well, that is cause to open the heavens. Maybe we can find a cure for the kids while we're at it."
"Maybe." The Baba nodded as she gave her friend a knowing look. "But first things first."
Yes, of course."
The Great Bear waved her huge, claw-tipped paw dismissively.
"You will be staying for dinner, of course."
"If you insist." "Oh, I beg your pardon." A sweet new voice came from the back door. "I didn't know we had visitors." The room's eyes turned to meet a chubby human woman whose tan skin and a lion's mane of golden curls made her appear as wild as Falon.
"They just arrived,"
Ursa said as she rose to her feet.
"Cynthia, this is a friend of Baba Hilda, come all the way from the Misty Woods."
"Oh, my!" the broad smile exclaimed as she approached, giving Falon the ability to tell that this woman was built much like she.
"Could you please show her around?"
Ursa asked. "Of course!" Cynthia responded as her bright blue eyes sparkled with the type of smile that made Falon feel warm and welcome. "This way, please." The forest was thick with the smell of a midsummer rain. Birds of a different sort screamed and warbled in unfamiliar ways. Falon listened with interest and wondered how far from home she must be. Baba Hilda had said she was from the Misty Woods, but the people of her village had always just called it the Greenwood. The village of her birth was also lacking of any official name. It was just the village, and she had not ever considered naming it. "I'm Falon," she finally said when the need to distract her mind arose. "Cynthia, pleased to meet you. Do you live here?" 12 years, the hostess said proudly, almost skipping as she said it. "Oh," Falon commented naturally, feeling a little uncomfortable by the other girl's exuberance. "So, what's it like?" "What do you mean?" The blue eyes blinked with a hint of empty space. The hunter focused on the lessons of her sister, trying not to judge. "Well, how is it different from living with people?" "Oh, well, the bears are really nice people," the blonde girl told her. "They're strong, honest, and full of good qualities not found in my old village." "Back among humans?" "Yeah," the chubby girl said with a little bit of regret showing in her features. "Why are you here?" "Well," Cynthia sighed, "my parents never fed me much." "Really?" Falon said, musing at the woman's thick arms and well-fed hips. "I know, right?" The golden curls bounced as she giggled. "You'd never know it now. We were so poor that they eventually had to turn me out into the woods." "Well, that's not so bad," Falon said, wishing her own family would have let her go sooner. "I was 5. "Oh, yeah, not so good." "Yeah? Well, I wandered for a couple of days before finding my way here. I smelled food and followed my nose. Turned out the bears had all gone for a walk while they waited for their lunch to cool. I ate their food, broke the baby's chair, and fell asleep in his bed. When they came home, they weren't too happy." "I can imagine," Falon mused as the story struck a familiar chord in her mind. "What happened then?" "Well, their cub wanted to maul me, and Papa wanted to throw me out. But Mama decided to listen to my story first. When I told them of my parents' decision to turn me out so they wouldn't starve to death, she said I needed to indenture myself to them to pay for the food I had eaten and the chair I had broken." "That was clever of her," Falon said with a smirk. "But why go through all the trouble to indenture you instead of just adopting you?" "Well," Cynthia explained, "Papa Bear didn't want me to stay. He said I wasn't one of them and not their responsibility. But Mama Bear kept finding reasons for me to stay. Every time I ate a meal or broke a dish, she would tell me that was just more time I owed them. It wasn't like she was punishing me, really. She was just protecting me from Pa. Why do I get the feeling I'm gonna hate him when we meet? Falon asked with a sigh. Well, he can be a little gruff, but he's really practical. Practical? The huntress huffed. Is that a new way of saying pig-headed? He just wants what's best for his family, Cynthia said defensively. He never wanted me to stay, but Mama would just tell him I hadn't paid off my debt yet, and I had to stay. I don't think he really hated me. We were actually getting along for a little while, until, the Ursa thing? Falon guessed. Oh, did Mama tell you? Sort of, the hunter admitted. She was a little scarce on the details. Oh, well, or so. Cynthia looked distant for a moment, an impish little smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. He was really angry with me for breaking his favorite chair and invading his bedroom. He never really liked me until Pol came along. Another baby bear? Yeah. She nodded fondly. After Pol was born, Mama was tired for a while. The birth was hard for her? Uh-huh. The blonde curls bounced as the guide nodded. It took forever for her to get better, so I did a lot of caring for him. Orso told me he was really glad that it was me caring for his baby brother and not him. Really, I think he was just afraid for his mama. Even Pa started warming towards me, or at least he stopped trying to get rid of me. Pa started being a little less ornery when telling me to do stuff, and he almost smiled a time or two. The story paused as they approached a fast-running stream. Cynthia moved along the ledge and settled herself onto some rocks. So what happened? The guest finally asked. Well, Orso got weird. Cynthia paused and then nodded before continuing. Started getting all moody, looking at the floor, not knowing what to say. It was like he was trying to be nice to me, but didn't know how. I think it's 'cause his pa never showed him how. But it was more than that. She looked at the ground and gave a blushing smile. Oh, Falon's brow rose. Oh? Yeah. So, you two, kinda. And do you... Yep. I'm sorry, Falon said as her mind did cartwheels. That's just a lot to take in. The blonde girl mused. You have no idea. What made you choose him? Well, I never met a human boy who did anything I liked. I can relate, Falon chuckled. But a bear? Yeah, Cynthia sighed dreamily. He's big and strong and noble. Not at all like those idiot human boys. He actually cares about what I have to say. Well, yeah, but isn't he, well, what? A little big? A rosy-cheeked smile answered. How do you manage? Carefully, Cynthia said with a satisfied grin. I mean, it was a little awkward at first, but I've lived here most of my life. I don't really see them as strange or frightening anymore. I've been here so long that they're the normal ones, and the girl I see in the mirror is the weird one. I see. Besides, Cynthia grinned, now that I've been with Orso, I don't think I could be ever satisfied with a human man. You don't say, Falon commented as she tried not to feel too weird about the conversation they were having. His fur keeps me warm, and he's so strong, and... Right, Falon barked in an effort to cut off the unwanted images forming in her head. So, Pol, tell me about him. Oh, he gets visions. Cynthia said like another person might say, he likes apples. You mean he can see the future? Yeah, sort of. Cynthia paused, thought, and repositioned herself. It's more like... he sees things we can't. Sometimes it's future stuff, sometimes he reads minds, and sometimes he just knows things. Well, the hunter shifted uncomfortably. That's creepy. Oh, don't you say that, Cynthia pouted. He's really sweet. Sure, sweet, furry little mind reader. I'm sure we'll get along great. Don't you do that! The gentle servant girl snapped at the hunter's mocking tone. I helped raise him, and he's a wonderful little boy. If you're going to make fun of him, then you're not allowed to see him. All right, I'm sorry, the hunter said as she stepped away from her hostess. That's not enough. The chubby girl stopped her foot and faced Falon as if she might throw a punch. You have to understand he can read thoughts and emotions. If you're afraid of him, he'll know. All right, Falon said as she held up her hands in a conceding gesture. She began to wonder if she would be able to see him at all. Reining in her feelings was not something she had ever done well. It would be wrong of her to scorn a young boy, even a bear boy, just because she was uncomfortable. That was what others had done to her. "I'm sorry," she finally said with a little more sincerity. "I'll try." "You better," the blonde girl pouted, "or I'll never forgive you."